So last night I did watch Luther Vandross's Never Too Much documentary. Finally, it was on HBO Max. I wanted to get my review. I have a lot of notes. If you see me looking over, that's why. But yeah, let's get into it. So he kind of said his impression growing up is that life is great, even if they weren't doing well. Like his mother made it seem like everything was great. So he says that's kind of what it was like growing up. He loved the Supremes, Diana Ross, like all the divas, Aretha Franklin. He would study them. He was very fond of them. So they kind of talk about that. And he had a group and he was telling them to get these emerald shoes. And they're like, my mom's not going to go for it. He went and broke in Spanish, convinced them like, we got to get these shoes and everything. And they're just saying like, he succeeded. He had a vision. He had charisma, stuff like that. And like I said, he studied every single singer. Already mentioned Aretha Franklin, Dionne Warwick, Temptation, stuff like that. And so he saw Dionne Warwick at the Apollo, I believe he said. And I think that's when he was like, this is really what I want to do. And they were trying to contextualize what the era was like. And they were talking about how this was the era of like the Black Panthers. And a lot of the songs by Black artists and acts was like hopeful, like we're going to get to the top. We're going to keep working. So that was kind of the era. And then Luther went on to Sesame Street. He was singing in a group. I don't know if this is a different group, but they said later he had his own group that was actually named after him. And he said that the label decided to name the group after him. It wasn't really his thing. So that kind of gets talked about a little bit later. He went to Kalamazoo, Michigan to go to college, and he did not go back a second year, even though he had good grades and everything, because he was really passionate about the singing thing. He wanted to just do that and everything. And so basically he didn't want to have a plan B. He just really wanted to focus on that. He told his mom he wanted to drop out, and his mom was very supportive of that, and he was kind of surprised. And he also mentions that his dad was a great singer. He kind of got that talent from him. And so they're talking about this Philly sound that was coming up, and it kind of stripped Motown down, and everything was more come as you are, like pick out your afro and all those other things. So that was kind of the mentality of that. And then they talked about how Bowie, Jagger appreciated this style of music. Bowie invites Luther and this group for the set that he's doing for the song. And so he loves Luther because he was coming up with all these parts and everything. He was really into it. Luther ends up arranging that album and everything. So like there was that. He rearranged some parts and everything. David introduced him to Bette Midler or something like that. It probably autocorrect. And so he learned a lot from her about singing and how to put on a show and all that. And Luther met Nile Rodgers, and he was all over his band's albums. Like he was on multiple albums, you know, like contributing parts, and he was like, you know, this is really important. He did jingles, and he sang some leads on some songs that actually became popular, and they wanted him to become the main singer of the group that I was telling you guys about. But he really wanted to do his own thing. And so basically we get on to him singing for Roberta Flack, and he sang on a soundtrack for her. She heard him singing one day, and she was just like, you have to do your own thing and everything. And yeah, she felt like he was getting way too comfortable kind of being in the background, and she really wanted him to flourish. So he jokes that she fired him, but she didn't really. She was just trying to encourage him to do his own thing. So yeah, he was really flourishing in those moments and everything. And then he says he went to a bunch of record labels, and they turned down even Epic. And then he went, I think, to a different person, or he went with Epic again with his song Never Too Much, was his debut single. And then he ends up getting signed, and he actually arranged his music. So he writes like the music and everything. He writes the lyrics, and a lot of people don't give him credit as a songwriter. So they really tried to stress that in this movie. And he has such a beautiful smile. And Never Too Much is really a classic. To have that be your debut single is crazy. He had 4 platinum albums during this time. He did Aretha Franklin's Jump To It album, which is a great album. And she really needed it because her career was kind of flopping. She released like, I think 4 or 5 albums like in that time that just did not really perform well commercially. They're not even on streaming, in fact. And so that album really jump-started her back, no pun intended, to, you know, prevalence and stuff like that. He did some songs for and with Dionne Warwick. Eddie Murphy made fun of him and stuff like that. He kind of played into it. He had like this KFC bucket in one of his shows, so he was like playing into it and all that. And Luther basically was all or nothing in regards to his weight. It's something that gets talked about a little bit later, so I'll probably talk to that when it comes to that part of my notes. But yeah, he was basically eating a lot, or he wasn't really eating. So that was that. And he said he was an emotional eater, so if things weren't going well with the music or his life, he just ate because he found comfort in that. And Jamie Foxx said that he used to put his phone up to the radio when Luther was playing for girls to kind of like woo them, and it worked every single time. In 1986, Luther gets into a car accident, and he said he lost his best friend in this accident. And so it was emotional for him. He broke 3 ribs as well. And someone from his band is like, "Do you want me to come out and support you?" And Luther was like, "Yeah, like I need that support." And yeah, he pled guilty. He took it hard. He lost weight, I believe. Somewhere in this time, and then because of this accident and everything, he started eating a lot. He gained the weight back. He kind of feared touring. They said that they were going to cancel the tour, and he was like, "No, I want to do it." So they went on these long rehearsals, 10-hour days, 6-7 days a week, and he was tough on everyone. He really wanted to get the best out of them, and he just worked hard. He wanted a big production. Like, he wasn't going to cheapen it, because he understood people spent a lot of money for his shows and everything, so he wanted to do it right. And then it kind of talks about how he was only playing on black radio and R&B and stuff like that, and he really wanted to cross over to pop and add new listeners. And they said he felt like he was being treated in a racist way by executives, and he was very vocal on that. And he knew that white artists were getting way more of a budget than he was, and he felt like that was unfair. He wants to be treated equally and everything like that. He wants to have bigger records. And they said it was even rare for black records to be at the front of the store. Like, oftentimes it was like all the way in the back. He really wanted a Grammy. He kept being snubbed at the Grammys. He got nominated 9 times and lost all of them. He finally won one for one of his songs, and he went back to the studio and he made them all address him as a Grammy winner, because it was something that he was looking forward to and something that he really wanted. I didn't know he covered Until You Come Back to Me. I believe that's what it was. I love that song. And then we got Mariah's part. She said he had a pure heart and everything, and that she looked up to him, and they did Endless Love. And I love the rendition of Endless Love. If you know one thing about me, huge Mariah fan. I forgot to mention I'm wearing the Aretha shirt, which is really fitting for this video and everything. And then we go on to his version of A House Is Not a Home, which is one of his classics. Everyone loves that one. He signed with Clive Davis and everything. And Clive was like, "Are you open to outside material? Because you want to become bigger." He said that he was. And then, he had success with that, which we'll go into later. And into his romantic life, he kind of said he was looking for the one. Like, he's still waiting for that moment. And he said Any Love is his favorite song, and that it was his only autobiographical song that he wrote. And when he lost the weight earlier, there was a rumor that he had AIDS or that he was dead, which very insensitive. There was a big stigma at that time with being gay and all that stuff, which we'll get to as well. And he said he spent more time waiting for love than being in love. And someone said that he felt like he couldn't share all of himself, which makes sense. And that they were pissed off that his friends discussed his personal life. So this is kind of on to Patti LaBelle, because as we know, she was asked kind of about that and everything, like why he didn't come out. And she basically said because he didn't want to disappoint his fans and his mother. And so I asked one of my like LGBT friends like what his take on it was, like, is that something she should have discussed? And he was like, no, like, yes, like looking back, it was obvious that like Luther was gay, but to like share something that's so personal that he didn't want out, like he felt like that was disrespectful, which I can completely understand and everything. And so yeah, one person that I knew was like, I'm just going to take his approach. Like, if it's something he didn't want to talk about, I'm not going to put it publicly out there, just being respectful, which I can see that. And rumors, Luther was not going to confirm or deny them. He was just like, mind your fucking business. Like, I'm not talking about it. And then he lost weight again. He had diabetes, so that's something to say. And his friend said making him all about his weight was very disrespectful, because they just made it like that was like everything about him. Like, they just made like a lot of jokes out of him and everything out of his expense, and saying like, you don't want to gain the weight back like Luther did. Like, Luther was going through some very traumatic stuff and everything. So I mean, that's like really fucked up to say. So I will definitely say it as well. And Luther said it did bother him that he just became all his weight to these people, and he didn't want to talk about that and everything, because I mean, he talked about it a lot. And then they promoted the album on his weight and everything, about how he lost it and then he gained it back. He became a punchline. And he worked very hard on his album. He played a song. I think this was the Dance for My Father song. And his friend cried. And he's like, this is going to be my career song. I believe it was #1 on the pop charts. And then he has a stroke, which was tough for him. And his friend came to visit. He didn't answer. So then he knocked on the door and like, yeah. So he went to the hospital in critical condition. And Luther could not go to the Grammy ceremony for it, but he does get a Grammy for the song. Clive was hyping him up. He was like, everybody loves this song. Like, it's a career song and everything. Doctors were shocked that Luther could even understand what he was saying. And they were saying that it's a really good sign. It's a really good sign, basically. And I think seeing Luther after the stroke is really tough. I think seeing anybody that you hold in such high regard be in a position of pain and just not being themselves is tough. But seeing that footage afterwards, I saw it a few years ago, and seeing it again in context of the documentary, it's tough. someone who's so larger than life, who has the biggest smile. Like, it's tough, you know, seeing that footage in the Oprah interview. And so, like I said, we had the Oprah interview, and then it got to the point where he wasn't breathing. He was really struggling with the condition kind of afterwards. He dies. They make his whole funeral about the celebration of life. He gets a star, and then kind of talking at the end, Mariah says he was really a once in a lifetime kind of artist, and kind of remembering him in that way. And honestly, the ending part was really tough for me to watch. I cried at the end. I really did. I got emotional. I did, just because you see like how much people really loved him and his career and what he did and the impact that he had on people. And he just seemed like such a great person, and you appreciate his music and how hard he worked to get to that point. And so, you know, to see him not be well and to see everything after the stroke, and like I said, watching that was tough, and him passing away, it was hard. It was hard to watch. I'm not gonna lie. That's why I cried at the ending bit, because it's sad, you know, because you just really start to love him watching this documentary, and then at the end, it's sad. So my overall thoughts on the documentary, I thought that this was a really well done documentary. Like, I've heard parts of Luther's story, like that story he says about him getting fired, and like parts of it, but actually like finding out like how hard he worked to kind of get to that point, and like how many people would sing back and forth, and like all the little dominoes that he put in that place. I think that it's really admirable how hard he worked, and everything, and just how much effort that he put into in his singing and all that. Like, I think it's cool also to find out about some of his songs I'm not familiar with and everything, and kind of how important that those were in his career to that respect as well. Having people that he worked with, having famous people chime in saying like, this is how he influenced me. I think that was something that was great as well. I think also them talking about the sexuality thing, because it's definitely something that had to be addressed. It was kind of the elephant in the room, because it has been something that's discussed. But yeah, I can definitely agree with the people, like, it makes them mad that they would even discuss it and everything, because if he doesn't want it out there, I can understand that and everything. So I will say that. I don't know. Also gotta add that Luther definitely has one of the best voices I've ever heard. One of these days I'm gonna make a whole list of my favorite singers of all time. I might do just top 15. Luther's got to be in there somewhere. Just what a great voice, and the amount of effort that he put into all those little vocal arrangements, all those details, all his performances. Like, that's what I like in singers. And watching this kind of highlighted like, wow, music is not like that anymore. Like, that's kind of what I kept thinking watching this. Like, the amount of detail, the amount of attention that people put on those little things, like the vocal arrangements, the performances, like all those little things add up into such a immaculate product. And the music industry is just really gone to shit in a lot of different ways. Anyone can be famous, and a lot of these performances and artists are just lackluster. And I miss having 5 artists, you know, in one era that were really popping off, and it's like, wow, these are all artists of a lifetime away. And music's not like that anymore. So yeah, I just have a lot of respect for what Luther has done and how seriously he took his career and everything, and for all the lives that he enriched with his music and his songwriting and him arranging his songs. I didn't know he did the arranging and the writing of music and everything like that. I thought that he just sang and wrote. But to learn that and everything, it gave a lot of dimension about Luther, about who he is, and I thought that it's great. And his legacy is in a good place right now. I think with the documentary, a lot of people loved it, and I knew that before I went watching it. And then also him being sampled on that Kendrick Lamar song and everything as well. And yeah, I think it's in a good place. And I really enjoyed the documentary. So I enjoy it. I enjoy it as a way to learn about Luther. I thought it was great. I thought it was heartwarming, and I'm glad that I finally got to watch it, because I was meaning to find a way to watch it and everything. And so for it to finally be out, I'd recommend it. But to those who have watched it, let me know what you think below, and we can continue that conversation. But A+.